Okay, today on the bench, and there goes my scanner. Let me turn that down a little bit. There's a giant barn fire in process local to me right now. So today on the bench we have a Baofeng two-way radio. This is a model UV-5RX3. It's a tri-band dual display radio with dual standby. So this covers VHF 136 megahertz to 174 megahertz, also 200 to 259.975 megahertz, and then also covers the UHF band from 500 megahertz to 520 megahertz. This radio was provided by Radioddity. I'll leave a link down below for them. FedEx man just dropped this off, so they shipped it to me from Amazon. So let's get her cracked open here. And see what we got. So a very simple manual. A manual written only in English for once. Save the trees. God, I get some manuals for some stuff nowadays. The blasted owner's manuals have like 8, 10, 15 languages. It looks like an unabridged dictionary. It's so big. So this radio does come with 2 separate antennas. And that depends what band you're going to be operating on. So let's see, we got this one covers from 200 to 260 megahertz, and then this is a dual band antenna, so this covers, I can barely see down in there, what is that, 136 to 174 megahertz and 400 to 520 megahertz. So this would be the one that I'd probably be using the most. But I think you can get a tri-band, and I'd have to check. Now I don't know if they have one, but I think like maybe Diamond Antennas might have a tri-band that would cover all 3 bands. Oh, let's see, what else do we got here? What the hell is this? Huh, looks like a earbud. It's kind of handy. Yeah, little earbud. PTT. Where's... Huh, I guess that's the microphone right there inside the little PTT housing. That kind of makes it nice. Belt clip, battery charger. Not much to that. I mean, that thing is light. Now, one of the nice things, and this is the first, I'm pretty sure this is the first Baofeng radio I've ever reviewed, because I've never owned a Baofeng. I've got lots of other radios, and I often tell people, you know, they'll ask me, hey, do you have one of the Baofeng, and I'll rattle off some model number. I'm like, nah. They're like, I can't believe you don't have one of those. You know, they're so cheap. I was like, I don't know. I've just never gotten around to getting one. So here we go. Here's my first one. One of the advantages of the Baofengs is they're cheap. Quite honestly, where in the heck else are you going to get radios that have so many features for so little money nowadays? So, actually look like good metal construction. I did a review video on the Radioddity iLunz HD1. Now that's a DMR radio, and I was surprised to see how well that thing was built. That thing's built like a tank. Honestly, I guess it's a pretty good feeling radio. That's smaller than that one, but it's got some heft. Doesn't feel flimsy. Nice sturdy feeling radio. How do I get the battery back out? There we go. Good metal construction like that one. So let me, of course, this Mike's radio repair. You know, before we turn it on, we're going to tear it apart. So let me get this torn apart. Looks like we got 2 screws here, couple screws up here. Probably take off the spanner nut there. Have to pop the knob off. Another spanner nut so we can get it pulled up and out. So, but yeah, overall, just first impressions looking at it. Nice, small. I mean, that's you got to admit, man, that's really friggin' small. Really small. I mean, talk about fitting in the palm of your hand. I mean, I can pretty much completely cover that thing with the palm of my hand. Now, that's the only thing some people might not like about a radio like this. Small buttons. you know, that's one of those things you get used to. And there's the, looks like that's, yeah, that's our accessory mic hookup. PTT, what is that? I'm assuming monitor call. I'll have to look at the manual, see what the heck the call button's for. Maybe it sends out a, I don't know if that's a code. So anyhow, let me get this little critter popped apart here, and we'll take a look and see what she looks like inside. Okay, so it's a chore getting just this far. You know, taking the screws out, figuring out the screws to get out was easy, but man, getting this thing pried up out of here, if I finally figured out what was hanging it up, was actually the jack, your accessory jacks for the PTT microphone. They stick out, of course, through the side here, so you have to slightly pry out on the plastic housing here so this jack could clear the edge. I wanted to take it apart a little bit farther than this, but this is about all the farther I think I'm going to get with this, because I would have to completely remove the display, desolder it to get it off the board. I removed all the screws off of it. Trying to get, man, this thing's reflective. So you can get a good look here at it. Looks like a well laid out board. It's nice to see it does have very well labeled test points on there. Looks like this one uses 7 volts. I see lots, 7 volt transmit. There's some 3 volt lines on here. Of course, the downfall of any radio like this is there is no service literature. So yeah, that's the only thing I do not like about and it's not just import radios, people. There's a lot of just a large majority of electronics nowadays. If it breaks, there are a lot of times I can fix stuff even without a service manual, but when you get into stuff like this, it's really hard. If it's a control or something like that, that's easy. But when it comes to diagnostics, working on stuff like this without a proper service manual, forget it. So yeah, but I couldn't get this board out. I took out all the screws, the 2 screws for the hold down bracket for the display, a couple other screws around the edge here, and then I noticed there's a screw right there. Yeah, that's not just underneath of this metal cage, it's underneath of all of this, and yeah, the display, it's soldered in, so yeah, I don't want to destroy this thing trying to get it apart before I've even turned it on yet. So, but here's the inside of it. So this looks like was last revised in 2017, at least a PTT board, and yeah, this one's 17, so yeah, this one main board was last revised in 2017 as well. But nice super compact little critter. So let me get it put back together now. Again, this is nice, does have, like I say, a metal housing. Now this one is not gasketed like that Radioddity that I did. I think they sell that one as a moisture proof. So yeah, this does not have silicone gaskets around the whole thing. This one, you don't want to go dropping this one in mud puddles. But again, it's not sold as a waterproof radio, so you should know that when you buy it. But yeah, it looks like a decent little radio, especially for the money. Yeah, that's the one thing to always keep in mind. A lot of people complain about radios like this. Oh, that's a piece of junk, I'll never buy one of them. I think, and I have to check, honestly I can't remember, I think this one was in the $40 range. Like I say, I'll leave a link to this thing, but for the amount of money you pay for these versus, go look up an ICOM or a Kenwood, take your pick of a high-end premium brand and see how much a Tri-band mobile would cost, and then compare that to how much this cost. You can't buy a battery for one of those radios for the price you get an entire working radio with the battery and the charger and the antennas and the accessories. I mean, yeah, the price is just ridiculous. They're your trash can radios. If it breaks, you throw it away and you just buy a new one because it's so cheap. I do see there, it looks like the keypad, I'm assuming, what do they call that, the sprue, or there's a bunch of them molded together. It looks like that was cut off a little bit sideways there. Not going to affect it at all, but yeah, it looks like, and I'm assuming they did that to clear the button right there. Yeah, so when that gets pushed in, the PTT button. Yeah, So anyhow, let me get her put back together and we'll get this thing fired up and see if we can get her working. Okay, so I've actually spent and I got another radio over here, just broke squelch. Figures. So turn that off. I've spent a few days actually playing around with this little radio, just give it a try, actually see how it works. So I think where I actually left the video off was the radio was disassembled. So I reassembled it, and it didn't work. Well, it actually worked, and it worked okay if you put the headset on, but I had no audio coming out of the speaker. Wasn't anything wrong with the radio, that was my fault. The speaker is attached to the front housing, and of course I had the board separated from that, and just flexing it back and forth a couple times, it broke the wire off. So pulled it all back apart again, resoldered the wire back on, radio worked fine. And this thing works really good. It's surprising. Now, there's one thing that dawned on me. This radio does 1 watt more than other versions of this radio, because this is a UV-5R. The UV-5Rs, if I'm not mistaken, like I say, this is my first Baofeng, but my understanding is I think all of the other 5R series, if I'm not mistaken, they're 4 watts. This is a 5 watt radio. They even made that error in the owner's manual. They had it right on the box, but they had the power level wrong in the owner's manual. It's not a 4 watt radio, it's a 5 watt radio, because this is the X3 version. Where the other 5Rs, that's another difference. The other UV-5R versions apparently are 2-band. This is a 3-band radio. So, like I say, I've been using it. Seems to work great. Now, I rarely ever use factory antennas. Now, if I know I'm going to be like maybe close to a repeater or talking, simplex to somebody that's fairly close, I might use the little factory stubby antennas. But I tend to like to have longer antennas and better quality antennas. So what I've actually been using on this radio is a diamond antenna. So this antenna costs probably about half as much as that entire radio with the battery, the charger, and all the accessories that came with it. But I really like these antennas. They're almost completely indestructible. Really good reception and transmit. I'm getting really good range on this thing. I can hit repeaters that are, good lord, I guess that one repeater's that's got to be close to 18 miles. I can key up and come through loud and clear. Now that was using this antenna here. But yeah, I'm getting like 18 miles probably at least on the high power setting. Receive seems to be pretty good. Now, receive seems to be pretty good considering we're talking about a walkie-talkie. We're not talking about a big ICOM, Kenwood, or Yaesu base station radio. For what this thing is, I think it actually has really good reception. Now, the adjacent channel rejection may be, well, no, actually, let me think about that, because actually some of the, no, actually that would have been within about that channel spacing. So, yeah, I do get a little bit of bleed over. Now, what I have done is kept the squelch on 1. Doesn't matter what band I'm on. I've kept the squelch on 1. I found about 90-95% of the time squelch setting of 1 is fine. Occasionally you might get a little bit of interference. You might need to bump the squelch up to 2, but for me it seems the squelch setting of number 1 has been working fine for me, which is the lowest setting. But yeah, occasionally I'll get, if there's somebody close by, it would start to bleed in a little bit. So, but again, you're dealing with a walkie-talkie. You're not dealing with a big base station or even a much larger mobile radio. So, I think, considering what this is, it's impressive performance. Like I say, you're never going to get the performance out of something like this that you're going to get out of a radio that's 2, 3, 5, 10, or 20 times bigger in size. Cosmetics, I guess it'll eventually grow on me. I could do it without, I'm kind of like walkie-talkie style radios or HTs that are more industrial, like business band radios. They're just flat black plastic. There is no shiny whiz-bang stuff on it. I don't need fancy flashy stuff. So, I could live without the metal trim ring. I could live without this aluminum, this black coated aluminum screen and then the speaker grill in there. Just give me a solid black radio. This stuff's just going to get scratched up over the years. You know, using this, having it hanging on your belt, it's just going to get scratched up and look like crap, honestly. If they just, and it would be cheaper for them, honestly. You know, in the long run, manufacturing-wise, all these little parts and extra assembly, that just costs the manufacturer money. Just stick with a solid plastic housing with nothing flashy. The less you know, damageable stuff that's on the outside of the radio, the better. So let's actually try this out. So I currently have it attached to the communications test set. I thought I'd show the receiver sensitivity on this so you can actually hear it. I'll start off with I'm going to leave the squelch on 1. We'll see at what level the squelch breaks, and then I'm not going to actually do a sine measurement. We'll just turn it up until I get full quieting. So we're going to be injecting a 1 kilohertz audio tone. I have the radio set to wideband operation, and I'm going to be injecting a modulated signal with a 1 kilohertz audio tone, and I have, let's see, what do I have the deviation yet? Deviation still set to 5 kilohertz. So let's see what it sounds like. Let's see, it is, do I have it set up? Frequency, yes, already on 100. So we're using the top right here. So I have it set, and I'm going to check all 3 bands, and I'm picking the center frequency of each of those bands. So I'm going to be testing it at 155, 230, and 460 megahertz, which is the dead center of the operating bands for all 3 of these bands. So let me turn the level down, turn the volume up here a little bit. Okay, I'm going to start turning the level up until we break squelch. And I'll turn it back down, turn up a little bit slower so I can creep up on it. Okay, that's minus 126.9 dBm. And then I'm going to continue to turn the level up until it is completely quiet, nothing but audio tone. There's not going to be any static, no hiss, no nothing. Now, we get rid of the crackly background right around minus 121 dBm, but I can still hear a slight hiss in the background. And if I continue up to minus 100 and, what is that, minus 114, it is dead silent, just nothing but the audio tone. There's absolutely no interference in the background. So let me turn her back down here. And we'll change to 230. Well, actually, let's do a power measurement while we're here. Let's see here. Menu, the analyzer. Okay, so I've got... Actually, what I need to do is really quick, because I know a lot of people probably watching this aren't going to know what DBM measurements aren't going to mean that much to them. So let me bring up an online conversion calculator. Okay, there's the one I normally use. And we'll try it on high and low power. So currently it's in high power. And we have 36.7, and that's going to drop off a little bit. You know, the longer I hold the PTT pressed, the RF amplifier stage is going to heat up. Just like any radio, the output power is going to drop gradually as the transistor heats up. And then also, remember, likewise, this is also a battery-operated radio. So, you know, the longer you keep it keyed up, the more you're drawing off of that battery. So, do that again. We'll call that one at about 36.7 dBm. So, 36.7 is 3.677, and it just the calculator takes it out like 10 decimal places. So we'll just call that one at 3.67 watts. That's pretty damn close to 5 watts. A lot of times I've had radios that, if they have a listed specification of 4 watts, they're lucky if they can do 3. And I've seen radios that were rated at 10 that are doing 8. So it's doing, 4.67 watts, and the max, and you have to remember those output power ratings they put in the manuals, those are always maximum power. That's the maximum the radio will do. So it's always going to be less than that, but yeah, that's really close. So let's switch to low power now. And we have 31, we'll just call that one at 31.6 dBm. So 31.6 works out to 1.44 watts on low power. Now let's change it to 230 megahertz. Do our receiver test again. I'll change it on the radio now.
2, 3, 0, 0, 0, 0.
And we'll turn the level up. Do I have the volume turned up? Yes, I do. Okay, turn that back down. Slowly creep up on it. Okay, so it unsquelched at minus 123.8 dBm. I'll continue up. Getting to the point where I get rid of all that really high-pitched crackling noise. I'd say it's right around minus 118.5, and then I'll continue to turn it up until I don't hear any hiss or anything in the background. I'd say right about there, and that's minus 112.3 dBm. So, respectable. Let's see. We need to change this to 230 megahertz. And we'll transmit again in high power. And we have 36.25 dBm. 36.25. And that translates into 4.21 watts. So it's lower than it was at 155 megahertz, but honestly, a lot of times radios, especially multi-band radios or ones that cover a really large frequency range, a lot of times you'll find that the output power gets lower the higher you get in frequency, so that doesn't surprise me. But still, from a walkie-talkie, getting 4.21 watts on high power, that's pretty good. Low power now, we have 30, just call that one right at 32 dBm. And 32 dBm is 1.58 watts. So actually, I think that was a little bit higher than the low power was on 155 megahertz. So let's now switch the radio over to 460 megahertz. And I'll punch that in the radio.
6, 0, 0, 0, 0.
Okay, we'll turn it back down. It's fully squelched. And creeping up on it. Okay. Call that one right around like one. Try that one more time. Okay, right around minus 126 dBm it unsquelches. And it's, I guess what you could almost say, crackle free at minus 118.9. Just rocking it back and forth to get rid of all that background hiss. Say right around probably minus 112 dBm. It is just dead silent, nothing but the tone. So let's do our power test now. So our frequency to 460 megahertz. Put the radio back in high power mode. Transmit, and we have, we'll just call that one right at 36 dBm. And 36 dBm would be 3.98 watts. So again, we're higher in frequency, and the output power has dropped again. But like I say, the highest power was at 155. And anybody that deals with multi-band radios, I'm sure you're from, even HF rigs, a lot of times you'll find that as you get up in HF in frequency, a lot of times your power might start to roll off towards the top end, especially if you have an HF rig that also does 6 meters. A lot of times you'll find that at 6 meters it's doing, sometimes 5-10 watts lower than it is on the HF bands. This radio is no different. I mean, you're covering, there's the Post-it note I wrote down the 3 center frequencies I wanted to test at. So, you can see the frequency spread that this thing's gone through. We've tested it from 155 all the way up to 460 megahertz. So that's not bad. It dropped less than 1 watt in that full range. And now let's check low power. And low power is doing, just call that one 32.5. 32.5, and that's 1.77 watts, which kind of seems strange. I almost have to check that again. Let me just do that. What was it at 150? I swear 155 megahertz, the low power was lower. 155 and 155.
0, 0, 0.
Go back to low power there. Yeah, 31 point, what do we got? 31.58. So yeah, it actually does less power on the low power setting, but does more power on the high power setting. So yeah, that's kind of strange. But yeah, so is the radio worth it? I think it is. It's a good little radio. Like I say, it seems to perform well. Now, if you want extended range, like I was getting, I can tell you right now, let me just reach up here and grab them. You're not going to get the ranges like I was talking about with a little tiny antenna like this. So this is the 2 different bands. If you want to get farther out, you're going to need something, get the camera up here so you can get it all in view. You can see the difference in these antennas. So, there's a night and day difference in the length of these things. So, something like this can only do so much. For most people, this probably works just fine, especially if you're getting into a repeater. But, if you start to get to that point where sometimes you start to drop out, or even just doing simplex, you're just talking handy-talkie to handy-talkie, and you're having a hard time communicating with somebody, it never hurts to upgrade to a better antenna. Now, I don't know, you'd have to check, but I think, and I know sometimes thinking gets me in trouble, but I think Baofeng might have other antennas. You'd have to check. I know Radioddity has longer antennas. I'd have to check the Baofeng accessory product line, but probably what I would suggest is if you're interested in getting, now like I say, personally I like diamond antennas. They're made in Japan and they're just fantastic antennas, but I do have some of the Radioddity antennas, and I'm sure the Radioddity antennas probably come out of the exact same plant that the Baofeng stuff does. Most all of this stuff is made in the same plant in China. So yeah, check with Baofeng. They probably have, like I say, you'd have to check to be sure. But yeah, even with these little antennas, actually it's impressive little radio. It takes a little playing around with it to translate from the Chinglish in the manual. As I often say with anything that's made in China, it was basically designed in China, built in China, and had the owner's manual printed in originally, written out in Chinese. That gets translated into English, and you don't exactly end up with English, you end up with Chinglish. And, you can usually get the point they're trying to get across reading stuff like this. A lot of times you just have to read it a couple times for it to make sense. So, read through the manual. I've played around with the CSS codes, the DCS, DTMF, everything seems to work fine on this. I programmed in a bunch of channels into memory. That seems to work fine. The channel scan. Yeah, not sure what else I could say about this little guy. Good working radio. The only thing I'm probably, I tell a fib. I'm not probably going to. I've already done it. I ordered a longer battery. You can get optional batteries for these things. The optional battery sticks out about that far, and it looks in the picture that increases the length of the radio by about that much, and then also fills in this entire area. So Baofeng does have optional, I think that's like a 3800 milliamp hour battery, where this one is, what is it, 1800. So it adds 2000 milliamps of battery capacity. Now I've been happy with the battery capacity on this one, but yeah, if you're going to be out all day, especially if you're going to be using these, like, your ham club, if you're doing, you're helping out with communications at a local event or something, fairgrounds, and you're going to be using the radio heavily, you might consider getting that longer battery. Fits in the same charger, apparently, that the battery that, this radio goes into, but that's something to think about. So like I say, I've already ordered one of those because it's a nice little radio, and I might even buy another one of these because, man, it's small. I mean, like I say, turn my hand over, you can't even see, get it right there. You can't even see the radio. The only thing you see is the volume on/off control. It's so small. So I'd have to give it a thumbs up for the money. It's surprising how good some of these really, really low dollar radios work nowadays. Another thing is, I'll have to check. I think the other UV-5R radios can be programmed through Chirp. I haven't tried it with this. I gotta be honest, I completely forgot about trying this with the Chirp software, because I do have a programming cable that fits. It just hooks up through like pretty much all the other radios, hooks up through the speaker microphone jacks. I'll have to try that and see. I'm thinking it probably will. Chirp covers a lot of these little radios, so that makes programming a lot easier. And a lot of people that have these radios, they like the Chirp software because they can take, frequency dumps that they're using on other radios from other manufacturers, and it allows you to easily import all of that hard work that you did setting up your all the frequencies, your DTMF codes, and CTCSS codes, all the repeater offsets and everything. You do it once, and then it makes it easy to put it into a different radio. So yeah, like I say, I'm not 100% sure that that'll work with this X3 version. I'll need to try that, but I just kind of think it will. So yeah, give it a try. For the price, like I say, I'll leave a link down below to Radioddity, because they're the ones that sent this little guy in. Appreciate them sending this in for a trial, and yeah, I like it. I think it's a good little radio. For the size, it's impressive power. They're squeezing an extra watt out of this thing compared to what the other versions of this radio is, and they added another band on top of that. Now, there probably is one downside of these radios. That's the legality, and I should probably cover that. There is no FCC ID number anywhere in there. This is not a Part 90 radio. This is not a Part 95 radio. This is not even, honestly, it's not even Part 97. This is a no-part radio. And the FCC apparently is now starting to crack down on Baofeng specifically. That's kind of like the company that they've got a hard on for at the moment. Matter of fact, that's, I think, in my printer. I did print that out earlier. They just came out here, when was this? September 24th of 2018 with this enforcement advisory, which is, if you want to look this up online so you can read the whole thing, it's number 2018-03. And it's for two-way radio, and specifically these radios right here. Two-way VHF, UHF radios may not be imported, advertised, or sold in the United States unless they comply with the Commission's rules. The problem with these radios from the FCC's perspective is, and I understand, a lot of people don't agree with it, but I honestly, I have to agree with the FCC. When you buy especially if you're familiar with the CB radio world, the export radios, when you take that radio out of the box, brand new, it is only a CB radio. It only does 40 channels. you have to open the radio up and usually cut out a part or add a part and then do a button press combination or something to get that radio to operate out of band, illegally. This radio operates on its full frequency coverage out of the box, and that is the problem. It operates on MURS, it operates on FRS, GMRS, amateur bands. Does this radio, let me think about that. I'll look at the manual, the frequency coverage. Where is the spec sheet in this thing? Ooh, I don't like that. I just had a thought, and I don't know if it'll transmit on that, because if it does, ooh, that's bad. Let's just get this thing turned back on. I want to try something. I'm going to try something that no radio should ever be able to do. This should be just hard locked out of this radio. Let's try 162.4. 162.400. And let me get the communications test set up at that. So frequency 162.4. Now, if you are familiar with that frequency, you probably know what I'm trying to test here. NOAA weather radio. That's the NOAA weather radio channel. This radio absolutely should not transmit in that. So let me try and key the radio. And look at that, 36.87 dBm. It transmits on the weather band. I don't like that. And that is the FCC's problem. This radio, out of the box, transmits on a lot of stuff it shouldn't. What they should do is do just like all other radio manufacturers over the decades have done. If you want to make a radio like this, you make it so it works only especially if you're trying to market this radio to the amateur radio community. Out of the box, this radio should only transmit on the amateur bands. That's it. All other frequencies should be, not possible. Now, if they want to make it so you can receive over that frequency spectrum that they have in here, that's fine. But they should limit transmit only to authorized amateur radio bands. Now, if you want to make it so you can transmit, because just like with all your other amateur radios don't have to meet any compliance standards, because it's an amateur radio is an experimental band. Amateur radio operator can make his own radio. He does not have to send it in and get it certified, as long as it meets the criteria. And that's that's the responsibility of that operator, is to make sure that his radio, the emission standards basically are within the FCC standards. So amateur radios, you'll often hear people say the Mars and cap mod. You take an HF rig, let's say, and it limits the transmit on that. Now, it'll receive on any frequency, up to 30 megahertz on most HF rigs. It'll receive on every frequency, but you can only transmit on the normal amateur bands. But if you open the radio up and either remove or add a resistor or a jumper or a diode, and it varies from radio to radio, just like doing it, like people do on the export radio, the export CB radios. They do a modification to it. That's fine. That's what Baofeng should do. Out of the box, these radios should be able to receive that full coverage, but only be able to transmit on the amateur bands. If someone has a need, because there are times, especially for Mars and cap mod type stuff, there may be a time when someone needs to and can legally transmit on frequencies outside of the amateur band. So what they should do is make the radio modifiable. That keeps the FCC happy. Out of the box, the radio's legal. It can receive on all those channels, but it can only transmit on authorized amateur frequencies. If you do the modification to it, then it's on you, the owner of the radio. You've modified it. The radio was legal, a legal amateur radio when you started. If you open up the transmit frequency range and illegally transmit on a frequency you shouldn't be, then that's your fault. So that's kind of where I stand on that. But yeah, I thought I'd make that clear. They are coming down specifically on this company. I don't know if it actually has it in here. They actually, because there have been a couple notices here recently about this, and they actually had the company that I guess owns Baofeng was specifically named, and right off the top of my head I can't remember what that, there it is, Amcrest Industries, right there, DBA Baofeng Radio US. So there it is right there. Like I say, they're specifically going after this company for these radios. So just be aware of that. Yeah, the FCC is cracking down on them. So legally, this thing isn't legal. In a nutshell, is what it's come down to. Because it can transmit out of the box on all those bands, it's not legal. Are there millions of radios like this in the United States in use daily? Yes, there is. Does the FCC stand a chance of doing anything about that? Not really. Quite honestly, no, they don't. That's the problem. They opened the floodgates years ago when these things first started hitting the market, and they're everywhere. It's like the Black Plague. They have spread. Trying to get rid of all these things, it's never going to happen. They just need to, with the ARRL, and apparently the ARRL is working with the FCC right now. Even since this notice came out here, or this enforcement advisory came out, they're working with them trying to clear that up. Basically, I think in a nutshell, to do what I said, radios are amateur radio only out of the box. If you have where you take the back cover off and you add or remove a resistor or a diode, or you add a jumper or something, which would then enable the full transmit over the full frequency spectrum, but that's on you. But out of the box, it would be a legal radio. So I hope that's what they end up doing. I think this is actually like the second notice or advisory that's come out against the Amherst, what the heck was it? Amcrest. This is like the second time in like the last few months that and I get the feeling what's happening is it's either Kenwood, ICOM, or Yaesu. One of those three, or all three of them. Companies like this are starting to hurt the big three. Those big companies can't compete with these radios right here. And you see these amateur radio operators, everybody has them. That's lost sales to the big three. And the only way they can fight back is try to get them banned. Good luck. That's honestly about all I can say. If they were worried about them, they should have done something about that years ago when these things first started to hit the market. They just waited too long. So yeah, I just thought I had printed this out and it was sitting over there in the printer. I wanted to make sure, so I'm glad I remembered that before I stopped the camera. So there you go. So my final conclusion: Baofeng UV-5RX3. I think it's a good radio. It's worth taking a look at if you're looking for something like this. Just keep this in mind. Other than that, I think the radio itself's fine. Build quality for the price is, more than what you would expect for the amount of money you're paying for this thing. It's not like this is a $400 or $500 radio. It's, like I say, this one I think's into the $40 range, I think, because this is the Tri-band. The UV-5Rs, the dual band ones are cheaper than this one. But the X3 3-band one is a little bit more expensive, but it's still cheap. Just dirt cheap, man. You can't beat it. Like I said, it's disposable. If it breaks, no big loss. You're out $40 couple dollars, you go buy a new one. So it's ridiculously cheap for what you get. So there you go.